The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives. We are looking at children's health challenges from a different perspective, one that includes critical thinking, one that's not afraid to give you the honest truth. I'm having back as my guest today, Dr. Stoller. K. Paul Stoller, friend of mine. You are a pediatrician who has gone through a lot, but you figured out quite early on that we had problems with our system. You've written a couple important books, Incurable Us, the most recent one. I just really love that book. It's filled with truths and pearls, and it's a great read. In 2020, the Medical Board of California revoked your license, supposedly for giving medical vaccine exemptions to 10 children. I bet they were onto you for a whole bunch of things because you've been outspoken and always right on track with what's going on. So anyway, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again, Paul.
Oh, it's really a pleasure and an honor. We're going to talk, folks, today about autism, and then we're going to touch a little bit at the end on RFK Jr. and HHS. I believe, Dr. Stoller, you have a personal experience with autism, probably, as I recall, early on in your career.
Correct. You're talking about the first child with autism that walked into my waiting room?
Yes, because I didn't see autism personally in my practice till 2008. So I'd already been in practice since, 1988 was when I started practice. So 2008, that's 20 years before I saw my first case.
As the story goes, as soon as I saw him, I knew he had autism, even though I had never seen a case of autism before, either as a medical student or during my residency. I'd never seen a case of autism. And I was praying he wasn't there for getting treated for autism because I didn't know how to treat autism. He was there.
I didn't either. I didn't either back then.
Yeah. So he was there for worms, and I treated him for worms with mebendazole. And the mom called me up almost immediately wanting to know what I had given him because he was making better eye contact. He was calmer and he was more verbal. And as I've told you on a previous show, that is how I realized that autism wasn't a psychiatric diagnosis, that this was a medical problem and there were potential interventions for this medical problem.
Right. So we keep being told by mainstream and powers that be that autism is genetic. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, there's no genetic epidemics. Of course, the CDC, has always been telling people, oh, there's really no increase. It's due to better awareness and better diagnosis, which of course is a backhanded insult to all the pediatricians who missed all these severely neurodevelopmentally injured children all these years.
Right.
But no, they didn't miss them. They weren't there. And this was a lie. And it was, just another thing I couldn't figure out. Why isn't somebody saying, what are you talking about? We never saw these kids before. This is new. This wasn't there in the 1980s, but nobody said anything.
No, and as I think back to my childhood, I grew up in Africa through high school, never saw a single case of even mild autism. And then I didn't see it in med school either. It was only in residency I saw a couple cases of what they called back then PDD-NOS, which is pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, the equivalent of autism spectrum today. Sure, they expanded the diagnosis to include the Asperger category. Yes, that could have increased some numbers, but you're so right. These profoundly nonverbal, kids needing 24-hour care, kids who are in massive discomfort from abdominal issues, having seizures. I mean, these are highly, highly injured kids. That's a new thing. And it's getting worse. You've followed the California data, I think, recently. What are the numbers now?
1 in 12 boys in California have autism.
Wow. and there's a significant percentage of those are severe. Now, look at the men who are age 50 and above, or even 40 and above. How many of them are walking around with severe nonverbal, possibly not toilet trained? It just didn't exist.
Well, I mean, that's what we said. Hey, if we missed these kids, then where are these adults with autism? You know,
Right. Right. So you then stumbled on and then did a deep dive into learning about ways to help these kids. And because you're right, pediatricians, we did not know what to do. I didn't even know how to handle ADHD at that point. I mean, we used to send ADHD to a behavioral pediatrician until that was ridiculous, because now 1 in 8 or 1 in 10 kids have ADHD. There's only a handful of behavioral pediatricians.
and you know, by the way, it was ADHD or ADD, which precipitated my trip to the CDC in 2006, because I wanted the CDC's blessing to do heavy metal testing on these kids. And because the third-party payers weren't covering these tests, because there was no reason to cover them. They, you know, anything that they don't have to cover, they don't cover. And so, you know, why are you doing heavy metal testing on these kids? Were they exposed to heavy metals? You know, so I was there and for that, and I brought with me all these neurocognitive tests for all these kids who had high levels of lead, who were diagnosed with ADD, and I showed how their neurocognitive scores improved when you chelated the lead out. I didn't bring the kids with mercury because I'm going to the CDC. I can't say anything bad about mercury at the CDC. So I just brought the lead cases, and I was told that for them to endorse a medical procedure, they have to be invited into a state and do a study themselves, and then they can, endorse it. And I actually, went back to New Mexico and met with the Secretary of the Environment, and he said, "Yeah, we can invite the CDC in as long as you guarantee me it won't cost the state any money." And I'm going, "What? Do I look like Lloyd's of London? I mean, what if they find out that half the people in New Mexico have lead poisoning? That's going to cost the state money." I mean, no.
Right.
See, I'm such a Boy Scout, straight player that. In the real world, I should have said, yeah, don't worry about it. I got it covered. Like, what, is he going to sue me? I just should have said, yes, it's not going to cost the state any money. But I was never one of those guys who made up stories or tried to manipulate people,
You're not a politician, in other words?
Yeah, I was not a politician, so I let the thing drop because I could not assure him this wasn't going to cost the state of New Mexico any money. But in hindsight, I said, you just should have said, yeah, it's not going to cost the state any money. Don't worry about it.
So
hindsight's 2020.
Yeah. So did you do heavy metal chelation in your career?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was a big part of chelating the heavy metals out of these kids, because their detoxification kinetics were so impacted by the reactions to the vaccines. They just became heavy metal sponges, never mind the heavy metals they were getting from the vaccines themselves.
Right.
So
what kind of results would you see?
I would see usually I would see mercury and lead, and the thing is, a little mercury and a little lead logarithmically increases their synergistic toxicity. So it's not addition, it's multiplication. If you lowered these heavy metals, their neurocognitive scores improved. So I was documenting everything. And, another thing I did was I was doing genomic studies on these kids too. Did they have double MTHFR mutations? Would they benefit from biologically active B12? Did they, different genes, because there were certain vitamins that we could supplement with these kids based on their genetics.
Right.
And so that's how I started doing, the genomic testing on these kids.
So with genomic testing, you were able to figure out that there are some genetic I like to call them glitches. It's not like you're hardwired like we think of with Down syndrome, trisomy. It's more of single nucleotide polymorphisms and those sort of things that make you vulnerable, perhaps because certain biochemical pathways aren't working as well.
That's exactly correct.
I had some fortunate successes with B12 shots, methyl B12 shots, definitely avoiding folate, folic acid, and supplementing with folinic and methylfolate as sort of interventions for that MTHFR thing. General pediatricians would throw their hands up, and they do this today. We don't know what causes it. And if you don't know what causes it, you can't help these kids, right?
So I became aware of the MTHFR gene, which, euphemistically is called something else.
Yeah, the mother gene.
I don't think I have to spell it out. So I was fresh out of my residency. So this is like 1986. And one of my patients had gone to a dentist to get some dental work done and died in the chair.
No way.
And I'm going,
From what?
She had a double MTHFR mutation. She got nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide. If you have a double MTHFR mutation, nitrous oxide causes your B12 levels to crash.
Wow.
In some cases, lethally.
Wow. I knew it was something to be avoided. I had never heard this story. I don't know how I missed it, but that is impressive. There are a lot of folks out there who have the MTHFR glitch. And if you've got the double, meaning you got the defect from both parents for the MTHFR C677T, you better not get nitrous oxide, right?
Right. And I think they've kind of done, so after that girl died, then the dentists were sending out forms that you had to fill out. Is this person perfectly healthy to get a dental procedure? They're trying to
put it on the pediatricians, right?
Yeah, they were sending these, letters that the pediatricians had to sign off on.
I remember them, but I didn't know about the nitrous oxide to the level that you just shared.
Yeah, so I would write on these forms, MTHFR status unknown, no nitrous oxide. So,
but other pediatricians are approving them. They don't know about MTHFR.
No, MTHFR, that doesn't mean anything to a pediatrician.
Right.
And, and I told you that, I became aware that autism was treatable back in 1989. And I started going to these, conferences. At that time, they were called, Defeat Autism Now conferences.
Went to several, yep.
And they were training about, 200, 300 pediatricians every 6 months.
And thousands of parents sometimes.
And I stood up and I said, you should be training thousands of pediatricians every 6 months.
Yep.
And this didn't make me very popular, but I said, you use terminology that conventional pediatricians do not understand. And I gave the example of leaky gut, which we all understand now. Everyone understands leaky gut now.
Right.
But,
not the mainstream pediatricians.
perhaps not. But, back then, saying leaky gut, that was something only chiropractors would understand. That was chiropractor lingo, leaky gut.
Right. Maybe naturopaths, definitely chiropractors.
And I said, you have to stop using the terminology that conventional pediatricians don't relate to, because they're going to be the bulwark. They're going to, they're the front line of changing this situation. Anyway, it didn't make me, politically popular with the inner circle of that, movement. But, I'm a Sagittarius. I just, say what I'm thinking.
Well, sometimes people need to be shaken a little bit. That organization, it's continued under the name of MAPS. There was a change of leadership at the Autism Research Institute that sort of gutted the good work they were doing. So that MAPS is still doing great work of educating. They're focusing actually on just clinicians now, as opposed to the large amount of parents. So if you're listening here, you're a physician or you have a doctor and you want them to go get some real education, send them to MAPS, Medical Academy of Pediatric Special Needs .com or .org, one of those.
And I was on their faculty for a few years when
Awesome.
they started out.
That's fantastic. So we still have a massive population of pediatricians who are in the dark as to the causes of autism. What are we going to do?
You know, I hate to say this, present company excluded. Pediatricians are the most risk averse of all physicians. They like to play it safe. And I got to tell you, as a group, they're not very bright. Now, they have a lot of competition. I mean, psychiatrists are right behind them in that department. But people are chosen to go to medical school not based on their ability to think critically, but to be able to regurgitate, be good memorizers, be good test takers.
Yep.
And
so true. So
and,
true.
you know, what I used to say, like in my medical school class, I would say there was like a handful, and we all knew each other. You know, we all belonged to essentially the same club, that we were critical thinkers and everyone else was just taking it all in and regurgitating it for everybody. So maybe, 5% of every medical school class might actually have, people who are thinking for themselves and asking questions. But the vast majority of physicians are just brainwashed, indoctrinated by the, Rockefeller Foundation and, Big Pharma.
Remind our audience about what happened at Simpsonwood. I think this was so important to wake us, I mean, you and I up, and people who don't know about it need to know about it.
So Simpsonwood was a meeting that was held in June of 2000. And I don't know if you remember, but in 1999, so, just before Simpsonwood, the FDA was on a rampage to get rid of mercury out of almost everything. And the American Academy of Pediatrics, in cahoots with the Public Health Service of the United States, felt like there's going to be such a public outroar about the mercury in vaccines that they proactively and preemptively announced they were going to get rid of the mercury in vaccines.
I remember that.
Okay. Well, the public outcry, the public outroar never materialized. So they kind of started backpedaling on their promise. And so that takes us to June of 2000, where a study that they had been doing on thimerosal and developmental and neurodevelopmental problems caused by the vaccines that had thimerosal in it was announced. And the results were not good. I mean, we're talking, over 1,000% increased chance of having autism if you got these vaccines. And so what the topic was in this meeting, that was, by the way, Simpsonwood, why was it held in Norcross, Georgia? Why wasn't it being held at the CDC headquarters? Because they were trying to avoid any future FOIA requests. This was essentially an illegal meeting. You're not allowed to invite representatives from industry, which is what they did. All the pharmaceutical companies were there, without also inviting the public. So they said, well, we're going to get around this by, having this meeting at a distance. I mean, the logic here was not good, but they realized, they didn't know anything about metallurgy. They had no idea that the mercury was doing this. And so their solution was, we need to cover this up. That was what they decided to do. And
they did, right?
They did. Yes, they had this.
They reworked the data multiple times. They couldn't get rid of the signal, so then they just started dumping data.
So so they had to dilute their data 5 times. There were 5 generations write-ups of this study. and until they finally, diluted it so much that there was no statistical significance anywhere. And that's what they published. We had representatives from the American Academy of Pediatrics there. In fact, wasn't it the guy from the American Academy of Pediatrics saying, I'm going to call up my daughter and tell her not to vaccinate, her kid until we figure this all out? I mean, so they were worried, but their policy was, this is about cover up.
Right. And so they've been covering this up for 20 years, 25 years.
Easily.
Yeah. And they give, phony reports, phony science. Let's pivot in the little time we have left. I'm just curious what your thoughts are. We've got RFK Jr., Kennedy's at head of HHS. Now he's up against industry control over public health. How do we get to the bottom of this? What are your hopes? What do you think he might be able to do?
Well, my concern has always been that captured pharmaceutical employees in the HHS, in NIH, at the CDC for sure, that there's so many misanthropes, so many nihilists, that just because you change the captain of the ship, that doesn't fix the fact that that ship's leaking, or the cannons don't work, or the masts are falling down. So in a sense, he's been made the captain of a sinking ship. And I don't know if he's going to be able to bail enough water on his own, unless he can get people in these organizations to help him bail water. And that's my concern, that there's not enough people. They're so entrenched in these positions where they, promoted normalized deviance, where pseudoscience is science, up is down, green is black,
Right.
that they're not going to be able. So that's where there has to be like a replacement, a repopulation of these people. And I don't know if that's going to be possible. I just don't know.
Yeah. I mean, he's made some good efforts. He's wanting all science to be transparent. He's wanted us to publish negative studies, which never happens. So he's trying to do some good, but I agree. It's a tough road. Our political system is similarly compromised, and it appears the media is also compromised. So even if he can get massive reform happening at the CDC, NIH, he's still also up against politics and a bought out media.
Well, it's really important I think, and this is one of the things he's proposed, is to get these pharmaceutical ads off of TV.
I agree.
Because that, if you're getting 70% of your operating budget from your pharmaceutical ads, which is what happens, on TV, that you're not going to say anything bad about a pharmaceutical company. Basically, you're working for the pharmaceutical.
Yep. That's why their ads are so ridiculous. They don't even care what they put up on the ads. Just the fact that they have the ads gives them the power.
Right. It's like, who are these ads for? Why are they advertising? No,
right. What person is going to walk into their physician's office and tell them, I want this drug, after they've seen that long list of things it can do to you, one of which is always death?
Well, you remember, I haven't seen these ads for many years, but there used to be ads like BASF, and you'd wonder, what are they selling? Well, they're not selling anything. They're buying influence.
Right.
That's what they're doing.
They're buying influence. Exactly. New call to action based on what we've been talking about today. What can people who are watching this do? We all need just give us one or two things we can do that will help move the needle at least a little bit in the right direction.
Well, we're living at a time where we can't trust anything we hear. We can't trust anything we read. So it's about, how much do you trust yourself? How much do you trust your gut? Do your own research. And I know that's a lot to ask of laymen. I remember, when I first got to medical school and looking at the New England Journal of Medicine and going, am I ever going to understand this thing? It looked very complicated to me. So yeah, we've gone to medical school and we can say, do your own research. But, you know, most people don't know how to do their own research. And they don't know, well, is this, you know, who wrote this? Do they ask those questions? Who funded them? Because there's so much misinformation and malinformation that was, it's sort of like, you know, the UFO stuff. We're going to put out information that's true, but then we're going to put out information that's not true so we can discredit everything.
Yeah,
So,
tobacco
you know,
science, another example.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
that's what we're up against. And it's just not fair. I mean, listen, you know, the average IQ used to be 100. Now it's dropped into the 90s. And, you know, you're considered cognitively impaired at 80. So we're dealing with people just don't have the tools anymore to be discerning. And it's just tragic. I don't
So
know.
you speak the truth, Dr. Stoller. If you are a parent of young children, you've got to realize you've got to get them off screens from the get-go, because once your kids are controlled by the screens, and I mean they are controlled, my own kids included. I was oblivious to the danger that was coming. So as middle schoolers, my kids had cell phones, and these cell phones got smarter and smarter. And I've got kids who cannot be off their phone for even 5 minutes. They're just addicted and trapped. And now with AI coming, the programming is escalating to a point where I think our only hope is to absolutely disconnect.
I am, you know, AI seems like it's a fun thing at the moment. I am very, very concerned where this can go. I mean, I don't know if you read the books Dune, maybe you saw the movie, but you know, that was taking place 10,000 years after humans went to war with AI. And so in this new society, there were no computers were allowed. Absolutely no computers. And I'm very concerned we are walking into a science fiction novel where we're not going to be able to stop AI from making decisions that are not in our best interests.
Right. And I've been reading they're really exploring having AI make medical decisions and write prescriptions. So see, for pharma, this is the golden goose. They've fed AI with garbage science that promotes their products. AI only knows how to do what it's programmed to do. So it will promote products for X, Y, and Z conditions. And you don't need a doctor anymore, because you don't need anybody that can think. You just want people that can follow protocols, and the protocols are set up to sell products. So if you want health, if you want freedom, if you want health freedom, you're going to have to take back total control of everything that's coming into your brain, eyes, ears, and food, what you're eating and drinking. We're at a time where now it is up to us to take back the control. Your final words, Dr. Stoller.
Stand in your truth. Trust yourself to make your own health decisions. Don't blindly believe anything you read or hear. Not in this current dystopic period we're going through.
Perfect. I'm going to leave it at that, folks. Thank you, Dr. Stoller. I am Dr. Paul. I am so honored that you are with us today and for your support of this show. Vax Facts is my latest book that is your guide to informed consent on all matters vaccines. And you can find me also at kidsfirstforever.com, whether you want coaching or other information. I look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, we're live. Can you tell us your name, please?
Yes, my name is Jan.
And Jan, what are your qualifications?
I'm retired now, but I am a registered respiratory therapist in the state of California.
And we've headed this is biowarfare because this is what you said.
Yes.
So tell us, what is biowarfare and why you think it is?
Well, back in 2014, we had biochemical labs here in this state, and some of them got released, and after that President Obama sent the biolabs over to China and other places. And we as a country, United States, has been funding, we've given over $2 million to the gain of function research that's happening in China right now. So or was happening, and before the COVID was released. So yeah, we've been giving money to this kind of research for quite a while.
And so going on from that with the shots and everything that went on in COVID, what also do you think is biowarfare? The shots?
I think the way it's been handling it, first of all, I believe in preventative medicine. My husband did a lot of research, and we've been following frontline doctors. So I had COVID at the end of 2019, and it was just regular COVID. And then when the beginning of 2020, when it kind of hit the States, I went to my doctor and I said, because he knew I was working a lot with COVID patients, I said, I need some hydroxychloroquine and zinc. You need zinc to get it into the cells. And he said, sure, I'll give you some hydroxychloroquine. But all this time, they were just pushing, and they still do it, boosters. We had to all be vaxxed. We had to all get the boosters in the hospital.
Did you take any of it?
I did not get vaccinated. I fought it for a year. They made me do CPR tests every week, and then we got some legal papers to take to HR so I could file for both religious and medical exemption. So I didn't know any other people in the hospital doing that, but they did give me both religious and medical exemption. And I think it's the fact that we were so short-staffed during COVID that they couldn't afford to let me go.
So you didn't take the shot?
No.
So do you have myocarditis or pericarditis? Or?
I don't believe I do. I think I'm healthy because I didn't get the vaccine. Because the vaccine is what does the harm. Right. And actually the statistics show that people who there's a higher mortality rate for vaccinated patients than there are unvaccinated patients.
Okay, so what did you see in your time on the COVID wards or working around it?
Okay, in the beginning, no patients could come in the hospital. I mean, the respiratory therapists work all throughout the hospital, ER, birthing center, everywhere. So we all have voiceras that we can talk to one another, and we have pagers for codes. So all of the patients that would come into the hospital had to be screened through the parking lot. Okay, so nobody.
For what?
For anyone who needed to come into the hospital.
Screened with COVID tests?
Yeah, right. Yeah, they would do COVID tests, and that's another thing. I believe most of the COVID tests were. I listened to the gal that was on the CHD. Her name was that did the lab tech, Holly. I listened to her. Very good insight about a lot of positive PRR tests because she wasn't able to run all the parameters on the PCR test, so most of them came up positive. So we had to wear the PAPR suits. If you remember what the PAPR suits look like, I have a picture of it if you want to see. It's the full, it's like the whole spacesuit thing.
So you got dressed up in a spacesuit?
Yeah, well, yeah, we all had to wear them and wear the packs, the oxygen packs.
You had to wear oxygen packs and spacesuits?
We all had to check out oxygen packs. Yeah, this is not a real good picture, but I think you all remember what happened in the beginning, the white hood kind of.
So you looked a bit like that?
Yeah. So when we came into work, all the people who went into COVID rooms had to have the full suit with you had to check out the oxygen tanks and all of that to even go into the COVID rooms. So everyone, even in ER, if they came into ER, this is, can you just imagine all the money that's involved in all this. So every room that had a patient in the hospital all had to be retrofitted for negative pressure rooms. So the hospital had like 4 or 5 isolation rooms for tuberculosis, for any kind of respiratory illness, TB, but then once we got past using those, the engineers actually had to retrofit every room with these big ducts that made all the air go out of the rooms into out to the exterior. So, and those machines that run that make noise. So we're usually, respiratory therapists are always carrying around stethoscope and listening to patients' lungs, because we can diagnose by the sounds we hear what kind of diseases they have. Well, when you have on all of this equipment with hoods and all of that, it's hard to even listen to anybody's lungs. So yeah, so that went on for about 6 to 7 months, where they just screened people and brought them into the ER from the parking lot, because they didn't want people waiting in the ER waiting room. So that was like the beginning of COVID when that happened.
So we have a lot of people that report, they come in, they're unvaccinated, all of them that we've seen on the bus, that come in and they get put on remdesivir after a positive COVID test. They all start off with this pulse thing that they put on their finger.
Right.
And often some of them don't even feel unwell, maybe a little breathless, not quite sure what's going on, but they're manically checking to see if their oxygen stats go below 90.
Right.
And then they're going straight into hospital. And all but a handful are not coming back out again. They're vented and they're gone. So first of all, let's talk about that thing that goes on the finger.
It's called a pulse oximeter, and it measures the percentage of how much oxygen you have in your blood. Okay, the percentage of, like I said earlier, the hemoglobin carries the oxygen, so it's the percentage of how many hemoglobins that are running around in your circulation that are carrying oxygen. So if I was at 88%, let's say, 88% of hemoglobin would be carrying oxygen. So with the combination of the positive PCR test, which could be true or not, depending on whatever PCR test you get, or how the PCR test is run, plus having a lower oxygen level, plus having any symptoms, almost everyone was admitted with that scenario.
But surely, and I don't know anything about this, is my question to you, surely, so forget COVID for a second, when we get sick, when we have a really bad cold and we can't breathe, or we have flu, or whatever the normal things that we get every sort of winter or whatever it may be, surely our oxygen stats are going to drop. And many of us would have not even known about it, because we never had one of those things on our finger.
Exactly.
And we feel like terrible for days, can't really breathe, but then we get ourselves back together and we're fine. Instead of going into hospital, being put on a ventilator and dying.
See, this is why I believe within the first, there's a graph I have, within the first 2 to 3 days when you first start having symptoms, that's when you treat. You treat prophylactically with either ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine with zinc. I did that when I started getting symptoms, and it was gone within 24 to 48 hours.
Quercetin, that was our
Quercetin's another one.
Good stuff.
It is. It is good stuff.
Not that any of us are giving out medical
See, now,
advice, if anyone's listening.
There's always a disclaimer, right?
That has to be done.
Right. And okay, so first of all, when Trump said he was feeling much better after the weekend being in the hospital, I don't know if you remember that, and he said the word hydroxychloroquine, I think it was just like blacklisted from there. We know it works. In fact, the country of India, they gave out what they call Goa tests, Goa packs. And India's got the same population we do. They've got millions and millions of people, maybe even more now. But so they gave out these Goa packs that cost the country like $2.64 each. And the Goa packs had ivermectin. Vitamin D is very important to fight off any infection. Vitamin D, I think quercetin or something. There's a list of everything that was in this pack. All the people in India took this within the first few months of it hitting globally, and they didn't have anything like we had here in the States. They were all prophylactically taking preventative medicine to prevent COVID.
So, as a respiratory person that you are, were you involved in the venting process?
Yes. Respiratory therapists, okay, we go through the same time training as nurses do, but in a totally different field. We learn all about pulmonary diseases, all the machines that people are put on when their lungs are in bad shape. So basically our job was, it's acute care, we're frontline, to be sure that everybody's oxygenation was good on whatever machine we could get them on. It was pretty much determined within the first 6 to 7 months I heard in the hospital, please don't put these patients on a ventilator, because then they have a 50-50 chance of ever getting off again, okay? So we have vapotherms, which go up to 100% oxygen. We have BiPAP, so we were dealing totally with those machines unless the doctor said, no, we have to transport this patient to ICU and intubate, okay? So we were always there with the intubations. We ran the ventilators, we ran the BiPAPs, we ran all the equipment. Even somebody who's just submitted and they need a little bit of oxygen, we handled all respiratory equipment and did all the turnaround. We cleaned them, we did everything with them. About the going into 2020, halfway through, every morning, I worked night shift, 12-hour shifts, and we all worked a lot of overtime because we were short-staffed, okay? But the state of California called our department, or my boss, they wanted to know how many people were on ventilators, how many people on BiPAPs, how many people on vapotherms, so that they would know whether there's enough oxygen, whether we need to borrow ventilators, whether we needed to get more oxygen, all of that. So every day we had to have that report for them before 7 a.m. in the morning.
But the people who sit where you are now to talk about their loved ones who they say were killed, they don't believe that their loved ones should ever have even been on a ventilator. They believe that, and when they look at the medical notes after they died, they were given paralytic drugs so that they couldn't fight back, and then before they knew it, they were force ventilated, and then fentanyl and death.
Yes.
What did you see as you were going? Did you see them struggling, or were they beyond? They were out of it.
Okay, remdesivir was used a lot. Unfortunately, there was an immunologist at the hospital that I worked at, and she pretty much prescribed remdesivir, dexamethasone, a lot of vitamins type of things. We had a problem with patients wanting to take their oxygen off, and that wasn't helping at all. So, and there are certain ethnic groups that had a higher incidence of COVID, and I don't know why that is, but it's biologically been proven that happens. So they just don't respond as well. But I do believe it was a lot of people are fighting adverse reactions. So
you have notes there. What else do you want to tell us?
Well, there's actually, okay, I believe that this is spiritual warfare, actually. I do believe, because we're seeing a lot of different offshoots from people dying. There's like, I call it the evil triad. They've got MCAS, I don't know if you've heard of that. That's mast cell activation. It's called POTS. Like 1 to 3 million people have got POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And I know some people that I worked with, other respiratory therapists, who've had those symptoms. And Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is another. But these are all diseases that are offshoot from the mRNA in the vaccines, affecting the protein, which creates a spike protein. You've heard of that? The good news is we have medicine to fight that. Okay, and then the spike protein going and messing up the whole immune system. I believe, because I'm a Christian, I believe that our bodies are made in the image of God, and that it's miraculous when you study biochemistry. I mean, everything inside the cell communicates with each other. We know exactly what to do. But these are affecting things like mast cells. Okay, mast cells in your immune system are like the sheriff. They're like the one that give all of the directions. And when they're messed up, they live in the bone marrow. When they're messed up, nothing goes right. They're telling the neutrophils to make these webs and clog up your blood, your circulation. So that's why J&J took their vaccine off, because there was a lot of coagulation and stuff like that happening.
In the Johnson & Johnson, which is not
Yes.
an mRNA shot.
I don't believe
No,
if
it's
there
not.
were, but they were still causing clotting, I know.
Right, because it's the same as AstraZeneca in
Right.
England, where they saw all these problems and lots of cancer and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, so they are, but see, okay, with the children, I know you've seen the listing of how many vaccines. I would say don't give any vaccines to children, okay? They are fine. We told our son, we're new grandparents, we said, please don't give her any vaccinations. The only vaccinations that have gone through any kind of preliminary testing are the MMR, which is,
For how?
okay, and right, for measles, mumps, and rubella.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah,
what injured my
but
child.
this is what, okay, but then we're having millions of people come over the border and they're not vaccinated, okay? So they're bringing measles, mumps, and all of that. But still, I believe that our
Do we
own
know that
immune
to be
system.
true, that they're bringing me? Do we even know measles, mumps is around right now, or did it ever? Here's my question: did it ever go away? I don't know. I mean, I come from an era where I got measles, and it was really hard to catch it. You had to go to parties and forever until you
Right,
caught
right.
it. I think there's a big lie going on here.
Yeah, there's a lot of lies going
If
on.
the immigrants are unvaccinated, then they're a lot healthier than we all are.
Okay, so
I'm not buying it. Sorry.
today's Good Friday, and we're very blessed. We're very, very blessed to have this bus here, and that's because people are speaking the truth out.
That's right.
And
but I don't think we can say that there is anything. There's no safe and effective vaccinations. Even the CDC
No,
says that
no.
unavoidably unsafe.
No, that's true.
So I think we need to get that one out there clear. We've seen the health of the unvaccinated. Everybody
Yes.
can see that.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's undeniable, all of that. And I
That's
think
true.
I thank you for talking about the pulse oximeter, whatever
Yes,
it's called,
yes.
and what you saw during COVID. But I cannot sit here with anyone and speak to the people and say there are some that are approved. The MMR is one of the most dangerous vaccinations on the market. If you look around this bus, you will see MMR absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, I know.
So
and it's not
there's,
good.
Approved by who?
Right,
Not approved by
right.
God, I can tell you that.
Right, no, and Jesus said that He is the way, the truth, and the life. We need to get to the truth. And the only way we're going to get to the truth is to do our own research, to take time. It's not easy. This virology, there's more people illiterate in virology, including physicians, than there's just a very few people. But there's books out there. Even Robert Kennedy, who helps with this ministry, he wrote the Wuhan virus, Wuhan cover-up, right? So the truth is coming out. Jesus said that He was the way, the truth, and the life, and we need to be advocates for our own bodies and for people that we know, to let them know the vaccines are harmful, very harmful. And I've lost a good friend of mine. She died from the shots she took. She was a 30-year, she'd been in respiratory for 30 years. She had worked in the ICU she used to work in the ICU a lot. And she just went home and was watching television with her husband, and she stopped breathing.
Did you take the COVID shots?
Yes. it was a miracle that I did not have to take the shots. Really, everybody in the hospital pretty much did, or I would have lost my job. I think it was because of my age. I thought, well, I'm either walking or they'll let me stay just because they need me there. But what was I going to say? Yes, this is crazy. There's like, what, 15, 20 vaccines. I say don't give babies any vaccines. Another thing that's political about this is in 1986, President Reagan, of all people, passed a law that gave legal immunity to all vaccine manufacturers. So there's been no liability at all until recently, and this is in the Defender, which is another part of this ministry. There is it's for businesses and people to be able to sue for adverse reactions and for vaccine injury. And it just came out in March of this year, of this month. So there's progress happening, but it's people like you all, and I felt terrible what was happening in the hospital. I would talk to other respiratory therapists and say, if they just treated this right from the beginning, none of this would be happening. Because ivermectin is a fantastic drug. It's been used for decades. Hydroxychloroquine, the same thing. And I was very grateful to get it. Every time I went into my doctor's office, they kept asking me, well, have you had the shot? And I said, no. I said, why don't you just put a permanent piece of paper on my chart saying I will not get the vaccine. And but he was nice enough to give me a prescription for hydroxychloroquine because he knew that I was in and out of those rooms. And but I didn't like what I was seeing, and I talked to other people about it too. And but we were there for the people. We were trying to get them out of that hospital if we could.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for what you do. Is there anything else you want to add?
I just pray that the people's eyes will be opened quicker, and that people will be able to take nattokinase. I have a list of frontline doctors' medications.
Well, so everybody knows they can go to the frontline.
Yes.
Doctors, the FLCCC. Because
Yes.
we don't want to be giving out medical advice. So
Right.
they're the people that you should go to if you want to.
Nattokinase is
going on
excellent. So that's what we take, and
Thank you. Thank you for doing this interview.